Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Women Empower Active, an initiative by UR Sportswear where we talk with amazing women doing really cool things to help inspire us all as we live healthy, active lifestyles and dream big and to do big things and even to do small steps to do those big things. Today, we're so excited to have with us Angel Mathis. So, Angel, first of all, hi and welcome to Women Empower Active.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, we're very lucky to get her. We'll talk to her later about, but she's leaving for Guatemala until like June or July tomorrow. So we're getting her just in time to talk with us. And one of the things that we really want to start with is you and your husband hiked the Pacific Crest Trail, right? Went
Yeah,
south to north, correct?
that's right. We
Right.
started at the Mexico border and we finished in Canada.
Okay. And they finished September 29th. But how did you're not necessarily, you're just like two normal people who like to be active and be outdoors. And how did you guys end up deciding, hey, let's hike from Mexico to Canada?
Well, yeah, you're right. We like to be outdoors. We like being on the trails, and we hiked the Camino de Santiago in Spain in 2013, which is a 550-mile pilgrimage trail. And we hiked, or not so much hiking, but we did a lot of trail running. And we just found that the more we did, the more we just wanted to live more and more on the trails. And so one of our friends actually hiked the John Muir Trail, and she had a John Muir Trail party. And I highly recommend trail parties. And if you haven't heard of this, what it is where you bring people and tell them about your adventure, your big adventure, and tell them how to make it happen. And so our friend had a John Muir Trail party and told us about the John Muir Trail, and it looked so beautiful. Her pictures were so amazing that I woke up at night thinking about it. And I just dreamt about what it would be like to be under this night sky and see the stars without any obstruction. And so I launched the idea to my husband about December of 2013, and he wasn't interested at first, but in about, I don't know, a few weeks, he started giving me books vagabonding, and I had a feeling that that was going to happen, and he came around to it, and we decided to hike in 2015, which we did.
And to do that, now tell us, so that's how you kind of came to that decision. What did you have to do in order to make that? You said you wanted to live more on the trail, and you made some pretty big life decisions, didn't you, in order to kind of embrace this whole lifestyle?
Yeah, so we had to obviously leave our house that we owned and leave our jobs and go and do something for 6 months that didn't involve earning an income and didn't involve being able to buy food at grocery stores whenever we needed it. So yeah, I guess those are probably big life decisions, but also uh, for us very attainable and something that was worth working for.
And that's and that was as you're make this decision and you're preparing for this, what was the reaction of your family and friends? Were they a mixture of support and are you crazy or all support or how did that go?
I think that most of our family just mostly was not understanding what it meant at all to hike the PCT. And a lot of our family was disinterested and didn't really ask about even what did that mean to hike the PCT. It was really funny because I was on the trail about 200 miles into the trail, and my sister had just watched the movie Wild, and she sent me a text message, which I got when I was in town, and she was like, "I just watched the movie Wild. Is that anything like what you're doing?" And it made me realize that my family didn't have a clue what the PCT was about. And so when she realized what it was, she was pretty excited for us, and she sent us some things in the mail and supported us. So I think our family is supportive, but maybe just not understanding quite what a commitment it was.
Right. And you mentioned, you had to leave your job and home and things like that. How else did you go about preparing for it? I mean, did you do things specifically to prepare yourself financially, physically, emotionally? And did you find yourself prepared for that?
Yeah, definitely. So we saved for a while, a long time. I mean, really, we knew 6 years prior to this adventure that we would be doing something around this time. We had no idea what it was, and honestly, 6 years ago, we thought that would be buying a house and possibly settling down with a family. And now and then the 5 years came and went. My husband graduated from nursing school, and we had a real heart to heart because we decided in the interim that we didn't want to have children, um, and we just said, we've made certain life choices for certain reasons, and it's time to go and experience what that is. And so for us, that ended up being the trail. And so saving was huge. Getting rid of our house, renting it out was helpful. We still own our place in Seattle, but we're renting it out. And then that's the biggest thing, just saving and setting a long-term vision and goal for what do we want to achieve in life. And for us, it meant having less stuff and having more experiences.
And then for as far as physically, you mentioned you guys had done a long hiking and you had done trail running. Was there anything that you needed to do to put yourself in that in that position?
Well, a lot of people say when they hike the PCT that the trail is enough training. And it's true because you cannot train to walk all day long every day when you live in the real world, because you have other things to do, like work and do your errands and meet with friends, and you cannot train. You just cannot do the level of activity that you need to do to be prepared. But that doesn't mean you're not prepared, because we were trail runners and we ran a lot, but even that wasn't preparation, because hiking for us is very different from running. It's totally different muscle groups. I went into it having several overuse injuries, and it was really mental. Hiking is way more mental than running because it's so much slower. And for a runner to start hiking so long every day, who knows that they can cover the same distance in 4 or 5 hours when they're running without a pack, and it's taking them 10 or 12, it's a different challenge. So the trail trained us too.
And so you said it's how much mental it was, and did it take you some time to make maybe that mental switch? Did you did you make that mental switch to you're like, if I was running this, I would be done and I'd be
Yeah, I think I was just thinking about this today and thinking how I never really came to grips with it. I always felt like if I could just run some, I would be able to do this quicker. And I think that we always felt that way. And I think that it was a good lesson in being patient and just being present and letting the trail unfold. But it was still a challenge. Hiking the PCT is way more challenging than any other run that I've done, for sure.
And there's no way that you can prepare for that, but were you expecting that when you guys had this vision about doing this hike?
Yeah, we definitely really expected that taking longer to cover miles was going to happen. And you're right, we couldn't prepare for it because we were so used to running, but we expected it and we just accepted it too.
And so, so I have to ask you, you're with your husband 24 hours a day, every single day. How was that on your relationship? And because some people don't do well with that much time together and having to go through those ups and downs that you go through on the trail, both physically and mentally. How did you guys find that you were able to be together?
Yeah, that question comes up a lot for us, and I am so glad to say that we are extremely well matched, and there really was not ever a time that we even hiked apart ever on the trail. A lot of partners will put distance between themselves to give the other partner some space, but we never even needed to do that. We tend to be pretty quiet on the trail anyway, so we didn't talk much, and that works well for both of us. And I think we both can encourage each other when we feel down, and we can both motivate each other when we don't want to go on. And we just find a really good balance between us. So we had no problems whatsoever being together all the time, and I missed that after leaving the trail.
Now, I was reading your blog. You had a couple of blog posts from your time out there, and you reached the halfway point, and you really had to deal. You had to deal with some really heavy emotional stuff, illness in the family, and leaving the trail for a few weeks. And how difficult was that moment when you had to leave the trail?
Yeah, so leaving the trail, because I didn't know if I was gonna get back to the trail, it was, so what happened is we knew that Tim's dad was sick, and we could sense that things weren't going well because we were getting texts about how his health was declining, because things like he's weak, he'd been into the hospital a couple times in a week, and we just had this suspicion that this wasn't going in the direction that we really hoped and wanted it to go. And Tim and I had a lot of discussions about when would we know that we needed to leave the trail. And we definitely knew that it would be if there was any tumor growth, because Tim's dad had a brain tumor. And at the first sign of anybody saying the word tumor growth, we knew that's just a non-negotiable. So we got off the trail within a couple hours of finding that out, pretty much. And it happened in a way that we were coming up to a road, and we were hiking out from the wilderness, and knowing that we were going to be getting closer to civilization, I turned on my phone to see if I had any messages, and I had grown to the point where I would turn on my phone and I would just be anxious because I just didn't want to see what was even coming, what could even be coming. And that day, that message came, and I was the one who saw it. I knew that I needed to show Tim right away. And from the point that I showed Tim to the point that we got to the road where we could hitch a ride into town, which was a teensy weensy little town that didn't have a lot of services, but there was about 2 miles. And so we went from this point of feeling like we had another 1,300 miles, or another, sorry, even, yeah, 1,300 miles to 2 all of a sudden. And so I think, because I thought at that moment, that's it. It's 2 miles and we're done. We're not going to be back on the PCT. And so if you can cram all of the emotions in that you think you're going to feel in the following 1,300 miles into 2, I feel like that's what I felt. I wanted to feel every step, and I wanted to feel every feeling of being happy that I was finishing, and still feeling this sadness of not really finishing. So it was hard, and it was emotional, and yeah, we got off and we got to Las Vegas area where we were able to be with Tim's family.
And you know, and you were there, and you know, and sadly, you know, I know that Tim's father passed away. And what when you came back, then you made the decision, you went back on the trail. And how did your view of the trail? Obviously, there's some sadness with you, but did your perspective change then when you're back on the trail? Not even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think going back on the trail was really special because Tim's mom came with us, and Tim's dad's mom's sister, so Tim's great aunt, and her and Tim's cousin, who we don't even get to see very often. And we went back on the trail just with the sense of, we want to finish it. It's really important to us to get all the way to Canada. And so we set a goal that we would still be done by the end of September, because we didn't want to get stuck in the bad weather, the rainy weather, and maybe even the snow, because for us, we knew if it snowed too much, it would stop us from getting through. So we really wanted to make sure to do the miles, and the miles for us were high, and it turned out to be 25 to 30 miles per day. And that's, in that sense, I just want to say a little side note about that, which is that we weren't special because we did that amount of miles, because a lot of people on the PCT do that amount of miles, and that just is a testament to how core people who like the PCT are. But we, so we set out, and we just completely and totally exhausted ourselves until we made it to Canada.
And that's you know, to kind of go through that, you know, to go through that finish. I did read also that you said that when you finished, you were expecting to feel like some sadness that the trail was over, and you actually were kind of happy that it was done at that point, right? Like, it's done.
I'm still happy it's done. It was so exhausting, and I think all of the emotions that a person can feel come into a long distance trail like that. You can feel happy and sad at the same time, and you can just feel everything all at the same time. So even now, I'm still happy it's done, and I still am so thankful every time I get coffee in the morning, because I made it out of a coffee machine, or I asked a barista to brew me some. I love that. But I miss being out in the wilderness all the time, and I miss sleeping outside, and I miss smelling the fresh air, and I miss the quiet, and I miss the birds. And so even though I love some of those creature comforts, at the same time, I know that I miss parts of the trail.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the wilderness and that outdoorsness, that being with nature, outdoorsness. I just made up a word there, that you like to be in. But those creature comforts, and we were talking earlier about your love-hate, maybe more hate relationship with trail food and trail eating, and the fact that you just get sick of food. I mean, you're eating tons of calories, but
right.
People don't really know like how much junk and how sick you get of it after a while.
There's no way to even describe it.
It was a multi-step that
food.
process you were describing. It was like put it in a baggie and then a double baggie and then into this and that's yeah. And then now you're hungry and you have to undo all of it. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. The packaging of the food is one thing because you just have to you break it down to the lightest weight possible. And so you're right. You put it in a baggie, you put it in a second baggie, then you put it in another bag where you put all your food, and then you put that in a bear-proof container, and then you have to undo it every time you want something. So that can be a challenge. But the types of foods that you eat are just you if we started off trying to eat well and we dehydrated a lot of our own food and that was probably our most successful food that we like to eat and enjoy, but that's a lot of food. Dehydrating 6 months worth of food, you better start planning a couple years in advance. That's a lot of dehydrating to happen. And I mean, I didn't even think at the time I was dehydrating my food, I couldn't even think about what dinner I was going to have on that night because I was so busy with my life and with working. So thinking about what I was going to be eating in 6 months was so hard. So that's why people end up eating a billion Cliff Bars and a billion um, goos or gels or all these things that they don't like. Trail mix. You find trail mix and oatmeal in all the hiker boxes, which are boxes where people drop off the things that they don't want anymore. So you find all these things and no one else wants it either because they've all had a million nuts by this point. All you want is candy, Snickers bars, anything sweet, anything high calorie. So it's so funny because my husband and I, so Tim and I went and stepped out on the trail to meet some of our friends who, Ross and Kathy, who I think are watching. Hi, guys. Congratulations on the Arizona Trail Yo-Yo. So we went to meet them, and we were planning to maybe hike out and backpack and stay with them overnight, and then we had a tantrum in the middle of the trail and where we just didn't want to hike, and the reason was Tim was like, I just can't bear the thought of eating that disgusting food we have brought. So we called it off. We were like, okay, forget it, let's go back to the car, we'll wait for them in the warm car. And the whole reason was because we had packed this food that we had eaten for all of these months on the PCT, and we couldn't face it. We just didn't want to look at it.
Just could not face it. We have a couple questions that have come in via Twitter. So just a reminder, if you're watching live, that you can tweet your questions at @URSportswear. Use the hashtag #StrongWomen. And our first one is from Elizabeth, and she asked, do you think you would ever want to try a solo hike?
Yeah, I would. I would definitely try it. I think that I know that I would enjoy it and I would like the challenge of it because you just learn so much about yourself when you're by yourself. That's a challenge, though, just like having a family is a challenge of ditching your partner for, especially if it's going to be for a long period of time. I would not want to do that. So I guess that gets to my point earlier of how you could feel so many emotions all at the same time. My emotion right now would be stronger towards having my partner with me, but I would definitely like to hike solo.
Uh-huh. And then Beth wants to know if you would through hike again, or would you choose to section hike?
That's a good question because on the trail, my husband, so Tim and I said section hikers have all the fun. And we would see section hikers all the time, and they were always happy and talkative and not so tired. And I think that section hiking does seem like you just don't get so run down as we got by the end. Because at the end, I can remember sitting on a rock, and at this point, you are so comfortable outside, you just sit on a rock, and before long, you are laying on the ground. You don't even care. And I can just remember getting up and looking at Tim and saying, I am so sorry I made you do this. The reason is because we were just so exhausted. It's not because I was regretting it, or it wasn't really, that wasn't what it was. But if
Mhm.
we were section hiking, I think that you don't get the prolonged suffering. You get kind of the excitement of starting and the excitement of finishing, and maybe you have a couple weeks or a couple days down in the middle instead of a couple months down in the middle where you feel like there's still so long to go.
Did you so when you saw the section hikers, were you jealous? Were you resentful? Were you like, gosh, why isn't that us?
No, that's the other crazy thing is that we would never wanted to be them. We love being through hikers. So we saw how much fun they were having, and yeah, we were jealous of how much fun they were, and we would try to rally and have as much fun. But the truth is that we still identified as being through hikers, and we really wanted to do that.
And when obviously you meet all sorts of different sort of people on the trail, and how did you find that experience of the community on the trail, and was it very were there a lot of people on there? Was it very crowded when you were on there?
So I know a lot. Before we started on the trail, there was a lot of hype about the movie Wild and the book Wild, and a lot of concern that the trail was going to be crowded.
Hmm.
We did, it's still a wilderness experience. So I know for sure that the trail was more crowded than in previous years, but there would be days where we would hike and not see anybody else. So it doesn't mean that there's not someone else close to us, because if when you're northbound hiking, everyone hikes at pretty much the same pace, because after you've hiked for a month, you can hike 3 miles per hour without trying very hard, and most everyone seems to do that. And so it would be funny because if you would stop for too long, it wouldn't be long and someone would come up on you. But as long as everybody's moving, it wouldn't be uncommon to not see anybody. I didn't find it crowded. I think that it's no longer the trail that you would want to go and not see anybody, because you will see people.
Hmm.
But I didn't think it was crowded compared to the Camino de Santiago, where hundreds of thousands of people do it every year, and you're seeing dozens and dozens of people every day. For me, that was very much still a wilderness experience on the PCT.
Hmm. Another question that came in from Twitter is, how many miles did your family go with you?
Oh, so our Tim's mom and aunt and great aunt, or Tim's mom and great aunt and cousin, they just walked briefly out with us at the midway point.
Okay.
But the really, really cool thing is that at the end, Tim's mom, who by the way wasn't really much of a hiker at all before this, we had pitched the idea to her in the middle of the trail when we got off, when Tim's dad got really sick. And we said, we think it would be really cool if you came and met us at the end. And the end of the PCT is not just at a road. The end of the PCT is in the middle of nowhere. It's an 8 mile hike in. And so we said we would love it if we could meet you at the road, but it would be even cooler if you could meet us at the real end where the monument is.
Hmm.
And we didn't know what would happen, and she met us there. So she hiked in 8 miles with her brother, our uncle, who lives in Puyallup, Washington. And they hiked in and they camped the night. And we met them in the morning, and then we all hiked out together. So that was a really special moment.
That had to be add some extra meaning there for you, and already a meaningful end to the journey.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing that happened was that Tim's mom brought the ashes, and we actually spread some of them at the monument.
That's what a special way to end that after such a difficult 6 months that time that
That's
you
right.
had. Yes.
Yeah.
Um, Um, we were talking when we about this when we were our conversation here, we're calling it about wanderlust, and I wondered what when you hear that term, what that means to you, and do you feel that you have it? Like, how do you define that?
Yeah, I think that I strongly identify with that word. I describe myself as that all the time. So I didn't even bat an eye, really. I just felt like that is the perfect description. And to me, that just means that you just like to go and do things that, without much concern about how you're going to make it happen, um, or worrying about what's going to happen when you're gone, or who's going to stay your friend and who's not going to stay your friend. And yeah, it's just this freedom and this. I also say I'm free like a bird because I just go where I want when I want, and I love that lifestyle.
And you had mentioned it at the beginning. We were talking about um, your decision to hike the PCT, and you talked about you and your husband really deciding what it was that you want, what it was that you wanted to do, what kind of lifestyle really that you wanted to embrace, and that just seems like such an important thing that maybe a lot of people don't kind of take that time to think about what it is they really want. They might just kind of be reacting instead of acting with intention.
Yeah, I think that I'm really glad that I have the husband that I have because um, I'm free like a bird, and I don't always think of of some important details, and that doesn't bother me. But my husband, who just texted me, yep. Um,
Hi, Tim.
um, he he is definitely the thinker, and so that's why he wouldn't. When we talked about the PCT, he was like, "No, that's not happening for me," because he really needed to think it through and think about how can this happen. So, yeah, we were very intentional about setting up our life so that we could do the things that we wanted to do. We have decided to live in a way that's so super plain that I don't think a lot of people would want to live the lifestyle that we live because I mean, take the PCT for example. You go weeks without showering, you eat gross food, and you hike all day long. And that's hard. And we don't have a house to live in, and our hair gets all tangled so much so that sometimes you have to cut it in order to get the knots out. But it's so simple and it's so plain, and that's the lifestyle that we lead. And um, we're not we're not living up to any kind of societal standards for sure, but we love it and we wouldn't change it.
Is there anything? I know that there are tons of things you learned on the trail and in that time. Is there anything that's the most that you came away with that you maybe didn't expect to learn, didn't expect to find out about yourself, your about the universe, about nature, about life? Is there anything that really kind of a lesson that you were not expecting to come?
Yeah, I think that I I lived a really pretty typical normal lifestyle in Seattle before going on the PCT, even though it was more on the end of simple than what a lot of people live. Our place that we own is 600 square feet. I know that might seem small to some people, but for us it seemed more than enough room. And we had a typical lifestyle, lived in a walkable neighborhood that we loved, and we'd go out to eat all the time, and it was great, and I loved it. And going on the PCT took away. It just strips you down. You have nothing. I can't even begin to describe it. But coming back from that, the thing that I learned is how little I need to survive and how much I don't want any of those things because they just don't really provide me that much extra happiness. And I'd I'd rather go and take a trip for a week in the Utah desert and see Zion National Park and Arches and all of these beautiful, beautiful places and camp for free and not shower than have a place that I have furnished even anymore. I'm totally fine sleeping in the dirt now and being dirty, and that's the lesson that I've learned is I don't even need showers anymore.
It's quite simple when you no longer need the shower, right?
I know. I mean, what else can I take away?
Great. Now, we did mention that your next adventure is Central South America and Guatemala. So tell us a little bit about what you're going to be doing there for the next few months now, half a year.
So I'm gonna learn Spanish. It's interesting because, or it's interesting to me to be doing this because growing up, you go to Spanish class or you hear about Spanish, learning Spanish, and you hear about people who speak more than one language. And I think where I grew up, it was kind of one of those things that you think, well, that's nice that other people do that, but I will never do that. And coming from finishing the PCT and knowing that I really do want to know Spanish, and a lot of my patients historically have spoken Spanish, and just being able to communicate directly with people is so important to providing good patient care and patient-centered care. And so I just am doing it. I'm going and I'm going to learn Spanish, and I'm going to be very serious about that's my job. That's my job right now, is learning Spanish. Just like when I was on the PCT, my job was to hike, and right now it's to learn Spanish. And after that, or during that time, I'm also going to learn surfing, and I'll probably throw in some mountain time too.
Excellent. We have another question that came in, and which I think that this would, anybody who is thinking about doing a long distance hike, how did you manage the unplugged aspect? My work is online, for example, so how did you manage this? I mean, obviously you weren't working, so you didn't have that aspect tied in, but we're very connected. My phone and my iPad are here along with my laptop, so I'm very wired right now, as we all are. So how did you manage that? And was that a struggle for you maybe at the beginning too? I don't know. You.
Yes and no. So I managed it I had my iPhone, and Tim actually canceled his phone. We went with one phone, and we would use that when we would get into towns. And towns in Southern California are actually not that far apart, so it was a really nice, and actually on the trail, you have a lot of service, even though we didn't use our phone that often when we were on the trail. We would just turn it off, but a lot of people would access service. So towns were close together, and that gave us a slow ease-in process because we didn't have to just immediately disconnect. There are certain parts of the trail that, like in Washington and in the high Sierras, that you don't have very good access, and you just deal with it. And really, you're hiking all day long, every day, and I never had very much energy to do anything else, and even when I had access. I don't know of anybody who worked from the trail, but it doesn't mean that it didn't happen. But I would like to refer that person and anyone else who is worried about being disconnected to Wired. I don't know Wired personally. Wired is a hiker who's well known because they stay connected and they do a lot of blog postings. Maybe the question came from Wired. I don't even know, but they managed to stay connected, and they might be able to get some good tips from them. And you can look at their blog. I think if you just search Wired PCT, I think it will come up.
So were you someone who, before you went on the trail, were you connected? Were you, Facebook?
As much as anybody else. Yeah, and even now I'm connected as much as anybody else. I love being connected to people. I missed it a lot. I miss being able to know what was happening in people's lives, and I miss just being able to write more frequent blog posts. But at the same time, after a while, you don't miss it anymore. It's just a new status quo, and so um, it didn't. I got used to it. It didn't take me any time to get back into it once I got off trail, though.
Right. So the service kind of so was it more just a product of where service was and then how tired you were, or did you guys go in and say, okay, we're not turning on our phones till we get to a town, and did you go in with any set parameters, or it just kind of fell how it did?
It just, yeah, that's really the way that we go with almost everything is we don't over plan anything. And for me, the second I say I'm not going to do something for some reason, that's when I want to do it. So if I set my expectations low, then things just work out.
That's great. There you go. There's an argument for setting the bar low for yourself, right? You can go higher and
Right.
not get all crazy for overthinking it, right? Because that can lead to
Yeah, that's
problems there. When you're you mentioned Wanderlust, and so when people who might be watching this who might think like, gosh, like that would just kind of be great, and that calls to me, maybe they're not ready to go as simple as in their lifestyle as you and Tim have done, but they want something like that. What would be your suggestion? What are some things that you would say to them?
So I would just say that, yeah, the lifestyle I am living right now is very plain and basic, and I didn't choose that even overnight, and it's just been something that I've, and I don't know that I'll always live this plain and basic either. But I think for me, the way that I have gotten to where I am with this basic lifestyle is intentionally deciding what is the goal and what am I working towards. It's kind of like a mission of an organization. Like, what is my mission, my personal mission? And my personal mission for me, and I think it can be different for everybody, and that's why everybody in the world does different things. But my personal mission is to have good relationships, to be healthy, and to do the things I like. And when I'm making a decision about anything, right now it's what job I'm going to take, what pay I'm going to take, what makes it worth it. I bring it back to, is it going to make me happy? Well, it's not going to make me happy if I'm getting asked to work 50 hours a week, so that's off the table. Um, is it going to help me make relationships? Well, jobs do that, but I just bring it back to my core values and my mission, my personal mission, and I think if anybody can really have that honest conversation with what is their personal mission and bring every decision they make back to that, then they can have whatever life they want, whether that's plain and basic or extravagant.
And as you said, you didn't go overnight to very simple and plain. It was as you lived more closely and made more decisions to those core values, it brought you in that direction. So it wasn't like, overnight you hadn't gave away all your possessions or anything like that.
No, that's right. I'm still going through my stuff and trying to get rid of things. And I think when you come back from a thing like the PCT, it's very easy because you realize all I've needed in the last 6 months is what's on my back. And out of that, I've even tried to get rid of as much as I can because I don't want to carry it all that way. So when you come back from the PCT, it's easy to get rid of it. But before that, it's for me, it was just this. For me, it wasn't even about things and living basic. It was about how do I achieve this goal of going to the places that I want. And that was kind of my first step of I want to go to the place that I want. And in that case, it was walking the PCT. And before that, it was going on the Camino. And before that, it was living in New Zealand. So it's just a continuous unfolding of how life goes. And as I come and refine my own personal mission, then I make other decisions.
That's great. And finally, as we wrap up our time here, is it that's a great kind of closing thought. But any final thoughts that you have of encouragement or empowerment for our viewers and listeners today?
I think that everyone makes choices, and I think that for me and for the people that I find to be the most inspiring in life, I find that they have a strong sense of what are they working towards, and they make choices to get to that. And I say that across all levels, because I have worked with people that have inspired me so deeply in the healthcare world, and they're not their lifestyle is so much different from mine, but their ability to build relationships is so great. And I've worked with people who are great at developing organizations, and who just live across the board the way that they want. And I think that if you can have a strong sense of what it is that you're working towards, then slowly and surely you can make that happen for yourself.
Great. Well, Angel Mathis, thank you so much for your time, for sharing your story, for sharing some very personal, emotional stuff with us. We appreciate that. I'm sure that it's helped someone else out there who's also might be going through some difficult times. And thank you for inspiring us to to look at our core values and maybe get out there and do some long hiking. We appreciate your time.
Cool. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been such a pleasure and honor.
Great, and thank you to all our viewers, and we will see you next time on Women in Power Active, sponsored by UR Sportswear. Have a great one, guys.